Let's see. The men's breakfast on the 14th is going to be happening, and that's Saturday the 14th. Love to have you guys there. Bring a friend. Okay, yeah, okay. And boy, that just kind of threw me off. I didn't expect whistling in church, but that's cute. All right. And what else is happening? That's about it. I just want to let you guys know about the men's breakfast and the graduation. Pray for the graduates. It's kind of cool. When I first arrived here 2.5 years ago, the first graduation they had at the high school, Rachel and I were invited. So we went. One of her friends were graduating, and it was incredible to see the place packed out, because I know that there aren't that many graduates at that school, but it's a community event, and the community gets behind the school, and that's a beautiful thing to see. That is a great thing to see. Well, let's get to our message. And so far, we're in the sermon series called A Love Story. And today, we're looking at this message truly called Renewing the Relationship. Renewing the Relationship. And we'll get to that in a little while. So far, we've actually walked along this book of Hosea, and we've seen some realities that the people came to realize, and you could see them in the book of Hosea. We've also seen some truths and spoke about them that the book of Hosea raises up for us to see. We also saw Gomer walk by grace. That was last week. We actually watched her walk by the grace provided to her by her husband. She walked right by it. I want to begin by moving from that point. If you have your Bibles, you can turn to Hosea chapter 11. That's where we're going to start. Hosea chapter 11. It will be up there. If you want, you can even use the Bibles on the blue tables, and that'll be page 630 in those Bibles. And then afterward, I'm going to read verses 1 through 4 and verse 7. After I read those, I have a question for all of us. Not just you, but me as well. So let's read. This is God speaking here. This is what he says. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt I called my son. But the more they were called, the more they went away from me. They sacrificed to the Baals, and they burned incense to images. It was I, God is speaking here, it was I who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms. I'm going to pause right there. I mean, he's talking about Israel. Is Israel really a little child? No, this is metaphoric speaking here. And what God is saying is, when you were young as a nation, when you came out of Egypt, I taught you laws. I gave you laws. I helped you walk into how to behave with each other and how to behave with the nations around you. I, in essence, grew you up. That's what's going on here, right? It was I, God, who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms. But they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. To them, I was like one who lifts a child to the cheek, and I bent down to feed him. You know, that lifting the child up to the cheek. Why do you do that? Well, to love them, and usually mom or dad puts a kiss somewhere on that face, right? For me, it was always the cheek for John, because he had that cheek that was kissable. For me, with Rachel, and she's not here, thank the Lord, it was right here. She had that forehead I wanted to kiss. For Augie, it was right on his nose. You kind of get the picture, right? You pick him up with passion and love for your child. And God is expressing that to these people, how much he loves them. God loved. God called. God taught. God took by the hand these people. And God was a loving Father. But notice, they didn't realize it. They didn't realize it. verse 5 and 6, we have God declaring prophecy in terms of punishment to be given. Okay, and we've been there. We've seen that in the book of Hosea, so I didn't want to read that. And we get that, the waywardness. But even in the waywardness, what we have learned in the punishment is that God gave him strength. It's interesting. There's always a purpose behind discipline. The end game. Perhaps as you look at it from God's point of view, there is an end game for punishment. And the end game, as far as God is concerned, is this repentance, this restoration back to him. We saw that last week with Gomer being purchased. Now, if we slide down to verse 7, go ahead and go to verse 7. There it is. Here's what God says. My people are determined to turn from me. Here's the question. We just read those verses, right? My people are determined to turn from me. The question, how do people miss? How do we miss or have a hard time seeing God's love, his grace, and God's leading in our lives? How do we miss that? That's my question. I'm not going to answer. How does that? That's kind of mean, isn't it? But not really. I want to give you that question so you can take it home. Answer it this week. It's a question that ought to be in our hearts every day. How do we walk by God's grace? How do we miss when he's loving us? I think there's something you're going to realize real quickly. There's numerous answers, but every single one of those answers will come back to a central theme. And the central theme is inside us, each of us. It's selfishness. You're going to see it's self. It's self. That's the theme. That's the theme. All right. So, these various reasons are rooted in the concept of selfishness. Let's move on. Turn, if you have your Bible, to Hosea chapter 8, verse 6. Hosea chapter 8, verse 6. Now, I'm going to read this as I consider verse 2 from chapter 11. God brings up the question, not the question, he mentions these Baals. Talks about how they are worshiping these idols, this other god. Okay? So with that in mind, let's read chapter 8, verse 6. And we just read that other one, okay? But verse 2 has that Baal thing, all right? And God kind of gets jealous. He is the one true God. And what he's really trying to make clear to us in the book of Hosea, not only is he the only one true God, he should be number one on our list. You know that list from last week? Our list of values, our list of interests, our list of things that we must do before we die. He's saying, I should be number one on that list. So what does God say about these Baals? That's what this verse is all about. Verse 6, chapter 8. Here's what it says. They are from Israel. It's another way of saying what he meant here is that you made them. You made them. They didn't make themselves. You made them. They are not real gods. That's what God's saying. This calf, a metal worker has made it. What does that next line say? It is not what? It's not God. Pause for a second. That list, God, let's say in my list, maybe he's 4th or 5th on the list. Anything above him is a Baal, is an other god. And what is happening here is God saying, hey, you made that more important than me. Because the truth is, nothing in this life is more important than me. Period. That list. The next sentence reveals what's going to be done with those other gods. Anybody want to take a stab? It's up there. What's going to happen with those other gods? They are going to be broken to pieces. It's kind of like that list. God's 4th on my list. 1, 2, and 3. There's going to be a day. There's going to be a day when 1, 2, and 3 on my list are going to be broken to pieces. And the idea of Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall kind of comes into play, right? All the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That's kind of it. Because God is not going to share his glory with any other of the Baals. That list, he's not going to share his glory with anything that's 1, 2, or 3 when he's number 4. There's going to be a day of reckoning where he will make sure he is number 1. Because every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. There is going to be a day. It will be broken in pieces. Our list, if not developed with God, for God, or unto his glory, will suffer the ultimate price. It will be shattered to pieces. That's what the Bible is talking about. It's just not going to be alive. It's because it's not real. We are going to be trapped, and only God will remain. Only God will remain. Those things that we have on our list that are more important than God, they are not God. And one day will be broken to pieces. All right, let's take another turn. Hosea chapter 10. If you're in your Bibles, you just turn. Hosea chapter 10, verse 12. I like this. I like this particular part of the book because it shows us things we could do. You know, so often we Christians have told people about our religion in, by the way of how and what we ought not to do. You know, don'ts. I like this because this is God saying, this is what you could do. And what you'll find when you go through the scriptures and you see and you look at what you could do, you're going to see how positive they are. And this is what I like about them. There's not one person on the planet that will take a look at God's list of things to do and say, oh, that's not good. Well, actually, there might be. Anton LaVey may have actually said something. By the way, he's the leader of the Church of Satan, if you don't know. Okay? He might say, yeah, that's not good. But everybody else, even if they're not Christians, they'll say, oh, yeah, loving people is good. And the things that God says to do, most people on this planet will say, oh, yeah, that's a good thing to do. You know what? Many of them might even say, hey, I want hands in on that. I'm not sure I want to go to your church, but maybe I want to help out with what your church is doing for that group of people over there. And as they do, the love of God surrounds them. And the next thing you know, they start showing up in church. Because we are a church that describes ourselves by what we can do and what God asks us to do, which is always positive. All right, I took too long on that. Hosea chapter 10, verse 12 and 13. Hopefully, as you sit here and through the past weeks, as we've been here, you're looking at and you're thinking about your list. You're looking at and you're thinking about your list and what is it that's on that list. Well, this might be something you want to put on that list if it's not what you're doing. Chapter 10, verse 12 says this. Sow righteousness for yourselves. So we're back to the sowing and the reaping from last week, right? The sowing and the reaping. Sow righteousness for yourselves. Reap the fruit. What is that? You sow righteousness. What are you going to reap? Unfailing love. Well, who doesn't want that? Who out in society, Christian or non-Christian, doesn't want unfailing love? Right? So God says, sow righteousness, which is something good to do. Yeah, I'm a church. Well, our church wants to sow righteousness because what it develops, what it ends up giving us, is this unfailing love. Now, the New King James and the King James Version uses a different word for that two words there, the unfailing love. It uses the word mercy. It actually says you will receive mercy when you reap righteousness. I love the way that sounds and it looks. Love. This love, this unfailing love, is best found when both husband and wife practice righteousness. If you're not married, this kind of love is best found when you practice righteousness. See how it works either way? It works either way. What else does God, the God of all creation, asks us to do? What else are we asked to do? Well, let's keep reading, because he asks a second thing, and I love this. And break up your unplowed ground, for it is time to seek the Lord. So when you're starting to seek the Lord, like chapter 6, verse 1, let us return to the Lord, is what the people said, and the Israelites said in Hosea chapter 6, verse 1. Let us return to the Lord. And here they are. When that happens, there's this idea of plowing up your ground. You know, that hard ground in your life? That unplowed ground is the areas of your life that you have not turned over to the Lord. Those items on our list that are not important to God, but they're important to us. Yeah, those things. And we are called to break up our unplowed ground. The areas of life, right? Until what? Until what? Well, until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. You know, many of you probably know better than I do. I mean, I've worked through this, and it's interesting what I've learned myself. But many of you know this better than I do about what happens when rains hit solid ground. You know, ground that has not been plowed up, like the hard pan in the desert, that they call it flash flooding when it happens, when rain pours down, and it doesn't soak into the ground. That's what happens when a plow has not touched the ground for years. The water comes, and instead of penetrating and moisturizing the underground, yeah, that's my new word for soil under the surface, okay? I'm sorry. Is there a technical term for that? The underground? I don't know. I don't know either. It's cool. Okay, it worked for me. The water just drains off like it's hitting the roof of a house, right? And that's it. And the house doesn't get wet. It just runs off. Very little grows in that kind of ground. And what usually grows is worth burning so that you can chill it, and then you can put something in it. And God, once again, the idea, God wants to richly bless us. He wants to infuse us with his blessings and deeply penetrate us all the way through to the deepest part of our hearts. He wants to reach our core. Also that the great farmer, the one in heaven, could plant his seeds so that he could yield the harvest that he wants in us. You know what that speaks to? You know, I was sitting this last week, Tuesday and Wednesday, really contemplating this. It speaks to a remaking. A remaking. You know, you're remaking the soil to become something that can now be useful for the farmer. Same thing with our lives. We are remaking our lives when we turn over those things to God. That those things on the list that are above God, 1, 2, and 3, we turn them over so that he could plow them under and work in our lives. This is a remaking of who I am, from self-centeredness to God-centered. And I love the wedding. In the wedding, this is portrayed by the bride and the groom as they realize that they are about to give themselves away to the other person. Two people becoming one. One flesh. One in priority, one in purpose, one in goals. And I really like hammering this in my premarital counseling. One, not just in purpose, but in action for the Lord. Where the two of them come together and realize This is what we, the two of us, should be doing for God above. That's a beautiful thing when the two become one in that area of life. Remaking what is now important as opposed to what used to be important. And then verse 13 speaks to, well, what used to be important. So let's read that. Verse 13. What used to be important? But you have planted wickedness, you have reaped evil, you have eaten the fruit of deception, because you have depended on your own strength. On your own strength. You know that last part of depending on your own strength? That's a killer. It's a killer to the marriage relationship. It's a killer to all kinds of relationships. If the biblical concept of marriage that's actually born in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, if that is our goal, because it's the vision God has for us, then the becoming of one flesh, one mind, one people is actually seriously hindered by one or both of the couples depending on themselves, separating from the other, and coming up with their own list of what's important. Our list, Gomer's list of what's important, is based in selfishness and self-reliance. That's what God's saying here in verse 13. Self-reliance is a killer. God calls us on the carpet on this. God's ultimate point is that only in Him will we ever be strong enough to defeat this big enemy of ours, selfishness. Only in Him. Okay, so I've spoken a lot about this list, right? I've done a lot of speaking about that list for about the last 3 weeks at this point. But I think I needed to because God speaks a lot about the list. See, God knows that remaking of ourselves is the only way, it's the only way to unfailing love. Isn't that what everybody wants? This unfailing love and true mercy in our life. And a life that's infused with God's showers of righteousness deep into our lives. And God wants that for us. It's good to have a God who wants good for us. That's a good thing. Weddings. One could actually say they are all about love, right? And you see a new couple and they're all, oh, love and love and love. And I'm not taking away from that, all right? I don't want to take away from that. But the reality is that's just our society. For much of history, marriage was and still is commitment. And love will grow. Commitment and love will grow. The wedding day, is full of much expectation, right? And rightfully so. Go ahead and be a romantic. Anybody a romantic in here with me? Yeah, okay, good. I like that. All right. But no marriage is perfect. And there's going to be fighting, right? My will, her will. Somewhere it has to be our will. Somewhere it has to come out that way. The saddest reality of weddings from where I stand, and I usually stand right here in between the two, okay? From where I stand is that your selfishness enters into the marriage at the moment that you say I do. That's the saddest part of it. God reveals to us what our new desires as a couple should be. That's the idea. That's the goal. That we go to Him and ask Him, Lord, what should be our new desires? What should be our list? Instead of, hey, you have your own list and I have my own list, and have fun with your list. I'm going to have fun with my list. Right? That all-important list driven by our selfishness becomes now our joint list. Now driven by what God has taught us and is important to Him. He's taught us through the Scriptures. He teaches us here in center plus a small group. Okay. He teaches us best in small groups. The best part is that God's list becomes our list. That God's goals become our goals. That God's mission becomes our mission. When we seek Him out and we ask Him what He wants. And as a married couple, and you may not be a married couple here, you may just be a person, but as a married couple, I'm speaking to you guys. You can go to the Lord and you could ask Him, what should be our list? And the two of you follow through on that. And if you're single, same thing. Lord, what is it that my list should be? What should be on that list? You get it and you go for it. You go with it. In the bulletin, I don't know how many of you have the bulletin, but in the bulletin, I've actually put a sheet of paper titled, How is God in the Center of All of My Life? Pull it out, because today, I don't usually do this, but every so often I like trying to do something like this. I'm going to put this down here a second. Kind of looks like this. This is the original, but kind of looks like this, all right? And if you don't have one, Linda, can you see if we have extra one of these? They're supposed to be sitting out somewhere, and I want to make sure everybody gets one. I am going to ask you to take this home. Not do it here. Take it home, and sometime this week, sit down with God. Sit down with that other person in your life, your husband, your wife. If it's just you, then just you and God. If it's you and your wife or husband, you, your wife, and husband and God, right? And boy, that just sounded weird. You, your wife, and husband. And that just was wrong, right? Okay, just caught that. How is God at the center of my life? Ask Him, Lord, what should be on my list? And I kind of did this. There's 4 areas: personal, there's church, there's couple, there's work. And for an example, in your personal life, Lord, I need to probably start reading 1 chapter a week. So you start reading a chapter a week because He's put that on your heart to do. Or, Lord, maybe I should, find out when a guy's Bible study is happening or a gal's Bible study. Maybe I just need to dedicate 1 hour a week to doing that with some other guys or some other gals. Because you're kind of giving that in my heart. Or whatever it might be. And here's the other thing. Either one of those could be for the couple as well. Lord, the two of us need to sit and read 1 chapter a week. Or, Lord, the two of us need to get into a group together. I don't know. The answers are not going to be like mine. Your list shouldn't look like mine. It might kind of look like mine. But the greatest part is that it doesn't look like mine. Because then we are a church that moves up and moves out into the community doing what God has asked each and every one of us to do on our own and together. In couples, as singles, in groups, whatever it takes. On the backside, you're going to notice there are some examples of what you could put into this. And it's mine. I am encouraging you. I am giving you permission. Not that you need my permission, right? But you have my permission. I am encouraging you. Go home. Maybe over 2 or 3 days. Take a look at that list. And see what it does for you. See what God is asking you to do. Here's the thing. I know not everybody's going to do this. That's okay. Here's the other thing. You don't need to tell me if you do this. This is between you and God above. All right? That's what it's all about. Between you and God above. All right, I need to move on. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave us at this point? I think that as I wrap this all up today, I want to share with you a question that was asked of me on Tuesday morning. I'm not asking it of you. I'm just asking it of me. It was asked of me. It's my question to answer. Tuesday morning during the prep session, here's the question. Al, how can you preach through this kind of a sermon series and not be changed? I mean, I blurted out, I just blurted out, I can't. I haven't. I am changed. That all-important list of mine, I've taken a good look at it. The idea of wayward living, and for me, the more important ideas of me plowing the rough and hardened ground in my life so that God will pour down His blessings and reaching deep into my life so that others can be blessed. So that God's winter and spring rains and His blessings of righteousness and unfailing love can penetrate. Now, I've been changed. My change is in my awareness of these things in my life and how I pray that my relationship with God will actually grow, like a wedding and the marriage after. Grows in love, my love for God, His love for me, so that my desires are His desires. My list becomes His list. And as we prepare to close, when we see the word love in chapter 3, and I don't know if you remember chapter 3, but last week we dealt with chapter 3. Chapter 3 is where Gomer literally sells herself into slavery because of her list. She becomes a sex object for sale. And she's in this marketplace. That's chapter 3. And Hosea shows up. It's a place where, Hosea just didn't belong. He's a preacher. What is he doing there? But God uses a word. And He says, Hosea, go show your love for your wife. And so Hosea goes to this marketplace of ugly, and he buys back his wife. He redeems her. God then turns around in chapter 3, the first 3 verses, and He Himself says, that is how I love Israel, my people. The word love, it's not that it gets mistranslated. It's not. It's not mistranslated. It's just in English, love can mean a whole bunch of different things. Man, I love that dress. I wouldn't buy it, but I love that dress, right? Or I love you. Will you marry me? 2 different loves. But in other languages, there's so much more there that you could find. And in chapter 3, that word love is best looked at and describes loyal love. It's on the screen. Loyal love. Committed love is what it is. It refers to God in regards to us. This actually points to His covenant of love for us, and it's based in His faithfulness, not ours. His faithfulness. This kind of love used here is to describe a friend that comes up beside us and walks alongside of us, shoulder to shoulder. It's a long-term kind of commitment love, like what we see in a wedding. A bond that connects you for a lifetime. See, God knows that we're fickle, that we have idolatrous, adulterous hearts. He knows that. Yet He is willing to walk alongside of us and be our ally in the trenches of life for life. That's a beautiful sentiment. It's a great way to see love. Loyal love. Would you stand with me? In a moment, Jerry's going to come up here and pray. But as we prepare for communion and for our time of offering, think about that loyal love that He offers us, each and every one of us. Commitment for life, all of life. And as we go to